Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly O'Horo, and this is Adaptable Behavior Explained. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today to Adaptable Behavior Explained. I'm your host, Kelly O'Horo, and we are going to talk about an emotion that all of us have. Our affective circuits are wired for it, and that is fear. But I want to really dive into it because it's meant to be protection, but when it's in overdrive, it can absolutely feel like a prison. And we want to have a better relationship with fear, understand its function, understand what we can do about it, and really change the relationship. And so thank you so much for tuning in today. So we're going to talk about fear, not the quick jolt that keeps you safe in traffic, but the kind of fear that lingers, the kind of fear that stays in your body way after the danger has passed. This is the kind that quietly shapes our relationships, our decisions, our sleep, and our sense of safety in the world. So to help us understand fear in a more human way, I want to start with that story from the movie Inside Out, because sometimes a Pixar film explains the nervous system better than neuroscience, better than our textbooks. And most of us have probably seen the movie Inside Out. If not, put it on your list of things to do in short order, because it is unparalleled as far as this topic goes. So in the movie Inside Out, fear, the character, is portrayed as anxious, jittery, constantly scanning for danger. He overthinks, he catastrophizes, he anticipates worst case scenarios. I call this waiting for the other shoe to drop. And yet fear isn't the villain of the movie. There's a line in the movie where fear essentially says, "My job is to keep Riley safe." And that's the truth. Fear is not a weakness. Fear is protection. So in a healthy emotional system, fear works alongside joy, sadness, anger, and disgust. And he speaks up when there's danger, and then he steps back. But what happens in the movie when joy and sadness disappear? Fear takes over the control panel. And that's where things really begin to unravel, because when I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop everywhere that I turn, I'm going to overassess threat when it doesn't exist. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about what fear is in the brain and the body. So neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman describes fear as coordinated brain-body response to perceived threat. Now we use the word perceive because there can be a perception of threat when it isn't actually there, and this is a trigger. So when fear activates our amygdala, which is the alarm of the brain in our nervous system, it detects danger and it sends threat. So the sympathetic nervous system mobilizes. The heart rate begins to increase. Our muscles tense up. Our attention narrows in. And the body now prepares for action. And so this response is automatic. It is so fast, and it's not verbal. In fact, it's 1 million times faster than anything that we can think through when our fear system is triggered. And it doesn't ask, is it logical? Is this reasonable? Is this safe? So in Inside Out, fear pulls levers, rings alarms, slams buttons, and in real life, fear kind of does the same thing through hormones, through muscle, through breath, through attention. Fear is designed to be temporary, but when we have trauma, it changes that. So now we're going to talk about how fear can stay on, and that's from trauma. So trauma is defined by what happened. It's defined by what overwhelmed the nervous system and couldn't be resolved. Bessel van der Kolk, one of the game changers in our profession, wrote The Body Keeps the Score. And in this book, it explains that trauma is stored not as a story, but as a sensation, a reaction, and an expectation. So when fear stays on, that amygdala, that alarm system, becomes hyperreactive. It sees threat where threat isn't. And when that happens, the prefrontal cortex struggles to regulate because it's not active. And the body remains in that state of readiness. It's like scanning all the time. And so this is why people often say, I know that I'm safe, but I don't feel safe. And that's not resistance. That's not denial. That is just biology. So like fear in the Inside Out movie, never leaving the chair even when the room is quiet. And so it's maladaptive memory encoding. It's stored in trauma time. So when the past lives in the present, this is a time orientation issue in trauma. And so one of the most important trauma concepts is maladaptive memory encoding. When danger happens without resolution, without protection, without choice, so there's powerlessness, or without support, the memory is stored without a timestamp. It's live. It's like ongoing. And so the nervous system doesn't encode that it happened then, that it's over, that we don't need to be afraid anymore. It encodes this could happen again. In fact, it likely will happen again. So we better be ready for it. So what we end up having is a tone of voice or facial expression or a slammed door or a deadline or a raised eyebrow or any of those things can activate that same fear response as the original threat when it happened in the first place. So in Inside Out, when Riley's core memories shift, her entire emotional world reorganizes. And in humans, trauma reshapes our emotional islands, for lack of a better word, also to trust, connection, safety, and identity. Fear isn't reacting to now, it's responding to unresolved then when it's stuck in the on position. Now, it doesn't mean we're not going to be afraid for a moment. In fact, I've got a funny story. The other day, my youngest son and I, we were walking down the dock where we keep our boat. And he joked and he acted like he was going to push me in the water. And he didn't. But my response to him was, all systems are working. And he just laughed at me. And what that was me saying, I felt the adrenaline of the fear in that moment, like I was going to end up in the ocean. But then it calmed down. And that's how I knew that I was anxious about almost getting pushed in the water or being afraid that I might get pushed in the water. And he said to me, oh my gosh, it's such a funny way that you said that. Because I just went, all my systems are working, because I felt that rush. So anyways, trauma is what happened and what didn't happen. So it's not just the things that we went through. It's also what support we didn't get when the thing happened. One of my favorite people that I follow about this topic is Dr. Gabor Mate, and he reminds us that trauma is not the bad thing that happened most of the time. It's the disconnection with the people that were supposed to keep us safe and supported that happened inside of us. And so fear often develops not from one dramatic or drastic event, but from chronic emotional neglect, inconsistent caregivers, living with unpredictability, having to suppress emotions to stay connected because our emotions were too overwhelming to the people around us. Or when no one helps a child regulate, fear becomes the regulator. So in the movie Inside Out, when joy and sadness are gone, fear and anger run the system. And that's not dysfunction, that's survival. And so when you think of people that you know, or even maybe yourself, if you're someone who's chronically angry or chronically anxious or fearful, this is what your body is doing for you because you didn't have adults to help you regulate your system. And fear steps up when there's connection that's missing. It's just how we survive. So now we're going to talk about how chronic fear shows up in adult life. When fear lives at the control panel for us, it doesn't always look like panic. Oftentimes, it looks like some of the following things, and I really want your ears to perk up here because this may surprise you. Perfectionism. Because if I get it all just right all of the time, maybe, just maybe, people won't be disappointed in me or I won't be disappointed in myself, which creates rejection or aloneness. Overfunctioning. I want everybody around me to be okay because someone wasn't there for me, and so now I overfunction. I don't want anybody to be alone like I felt. People pleasing. I want to make sure everybody's okay because if they're not okay, maybe they get frustrated or angry or push me away, or maybe it's even dangerous. So I never want to be the reason that that's happened. So I'm a people pleaser. Emotional numbness. The emotional world is just too much, so I shut it all down. And the bad part about that is we don't just blunt our protective emotions, we also blunt our enhancing emotions like love and lust and connection. And so we don't want to be stuck in emotional numbness. Chronic busyness is another thing that people will do. This is your classic workaholic. If I stay really busy, I'm trying to avoid the fear of failure or of rejection or not enoughness. Hyper-independence is a sign of chronic fear. This is in adulthood. This is someone who's never going to rely on anybody. I've got it myself because the truth is, I don't want to be disappointed like I was when I was a child. Maybe difficulty resting or trusting. So these are the people that oftentimes are diagnosed with ADHD, but this is just the nervous system unsettled. And so fidgeting, can't hold still, can't rest, always has to be busy, and certainly doesn't trust that things are going to be okay. Fear disguises itself as competence, productivity, and control. Many people don't realize that they're afraid, but they feel exhausted. And oftentimes when they come into therapy, that's what they're presenting with. And then we have to kind of reverse engineer, what are they afraid of? So here's the bad news. Insight alone won't turn the fear off, but there is hope. In Inside Out, Joy can't logic fear into calm, and you hear her try. The system changes through experience, not explanation. Back to Dr. Vanderkolk, he talks about if trauma is pre-verbal, it lives in the body, not the narrative. So this is what we would call implicit trauma rather than explicit, that's tied to all of the things that happen in our older selves where we can see and remember experiences. And then this is why people can understand their trauma, they can name their triggers, but they can still feel hijacked by fear. And this is what makes people so frustrated. But fear is a bottom-up process, and healing must meet it here. So I'm not going to dig in so deeply to all the different types of bottom-up therapies, but I have a whole episode on how to heal trauma, so I would check that out. And that'll be down in the show notes as well, because that's a nice sister companion to this episode. But when you think about fear, and teaching fear that it's safe now does take some work. So healing fear is not about eliminating it. It's about right-sizing it and making it understand that now is not then. So some effective approaches that are beneficial is regulation before processing. Safety comes first. So we have to recognize that we have to breathe, we have to slow down, because safety doesn't we don't know that we're safe unless we do that first. So this is about somatic awareness. This is about learning to notice sensations without panic or without judgment. This is about just present awareness, connecting to, like I gave the example, recognizing that I had a burst of adrenaline, my heart rate went up, my muscles tightened when my son was pretending like he was going to throw me in the water. It's just a somatic awareness of what's happening. And allowing or completing a defensive response, allowing fight or flight or freeze energy to gently resolve. And so this is tracking that energy that happens in the body when we are activated by fear. And so the other thing that benefits fear and settles fear down is predictable environments and relationships. So consistent routines. Kids that are anxious or overstimulated and don't have consistent routines, this is one of the first things we talk to parents about. Like, is bedtime the same every night? Do we know we can count on, all the things that kids need to be consistent, because their nervous systems will settle down? Boundaries, we need to have those for ourselves and for those around us so that we can have a more predictable environment. And consistency in our relationships is really important. That helps us feel safe in the now, so that we're not anxious and fearful. And then relational healing really helps fear heal faster. So if you have someone that you trust, who you feel in connection with, you have safe connection with, your anxiety and fear healing will be more expeditious than if you're in isolation. Fear learns through repetition and experience, not willpower. And so fear's got a job to do. It's here to keep us safe. And sometimes if it's in overdrive, it's too much of a good thing. And so we have to integrate our fear. And like in Inside Out, fear integrates into the system. And that's what we need to do for ourselves if we feel like fear is driving our life. And so I want you to hear this clearly. If you are feeling like that, your nervous system is not broken. Fear is just stuck in the on position because it once kept you alive. It kept you connected, or it kept you protected. And healing isn't about silencing fear. It's about teaching your body that the danger has passed, that it's over, that you're in the now, not the then. And it doesn't have to do this alone anymore. You don't need to fire fear. You don't need to kick it out or put it in the trunk. You just need to let it rest. So hopefully this helps you better understand the biology of fear and how it's really trying to just protect you from danger. Thank you so much for tuning into Adaptable today. If you found this episode helpful, please give us a subscribe. Most of our watch hours are not by subscribed viewers. So if you're watching and you're interested, please go ahead and subscribe, like or share the show with someone that it might help. And until we meet again, don't forget to lead with love. It'll never steer you wrong.